They called it the flying milk bottle. A fat, dumpy brute of a plane that looked like someone had welded wings onto a water heater. Even its nickname, the P-47 Thunderbolt, sounded like wishful thinking. The Germans laughed the first time they saw it. They'd spent years perfecting sleek, elegant fighter planes with shark-like curves and razor wings, and here came the Americans, dragging this oversized lunchbox into battle. It looked slow. It looked stupid. It looked like an easy kill. But the thing about jokes is that sometimes they hit back. And this one hit like an angry god with a machine gun. Within 2 years, the flying milk bottle went from punchline to apocalypse, the plane that turned the skies of Europe into a one-sided massacre. This is how it happened. It all started with desperation. In 1940, the US Army Air Corps realized it didn't have a single fighter that could challenge German aircraft above 20,000 feet. The Germans owned the skies with their Bf-109s and Fw-190s. So they went to Republic Aviation and told chief designer Alexander Kartveli, build something that can fight them up there and win. Kartveli looked at the specs and shook his head. You can't do that with a light plane, he said. Then he smiled. So, we'll build a heavy one. He wasn't joking. The new design, the XP-47B, was nearly twice as heavy as anything flying at the time. 10,000 pounds empty. It had an engine so massive it needed a turbo supercharger buried in the belly of the plane, connected by a maze of pipes that looked like a spaghetti factory exploded inside. Test pilots took one look and said, "You sure this thing is supposed to fly?" Kartveli just shrugged. "We'll see." They saw. And the first flights were terrifying. It took forever to get off the ground, burned fuel like a locomotive, and when it fired its 8 machine guns, the recoil nearly stopped it mid-air. It was so fat that mechanics had to use ladders just to refuel it. The pilots called it the Jug. Not affectionately, just descriptively. The first time it went to war, in April 1943, the Luftwaffe couldn't believe their luck. 16 P-47s were spotted over France, escorting bombers. A German ace, Ralph Hermeken, radioed down to his comrades, "The Americans have sent us milk bottles." From above, that's exactly what they looked like, white-bellied, bulbous, wobbling through thin air like airborne beer kegs. So the Germans attacked, eager to collect some easy kills. And then something strange happened. They fired their cannons, and the milk bottles didn't fall. They just kept flying. 1, 2, 3 direct hits, and nothing. It wasn't that they were invincible. It was that they were absurdly durable. The P-47's engine didn't rely on fragile coolant lines like the German planes. It was air-cooled, no radiator to hit, no coolant to leak. You could shoot holes clean through it and it would just keep going, spitting oil and fury. Its armor plating could take cannon shells that would shred most fighters in seconds. Its control surfaces were redundant. And when it finally pointed those 8.50 caliber machine guns at you, well, that was the end of the conversation. 8 guns, each firing at 13 rounds per second. That's over 100 bullets every second, each the size of your thumb. When a P-47 opened fire, it didn't just shoot at you. It erased you. At first, American pilots didn't know how to use it. They tried to fight like the British Spitfires and German Messerschmitts, turning, climbing, dueling. It was like trying to box while wearing a refrigerator. But then someone figured it out. Don't turn. Don't climb. Don't play their game. Use gravity. From 30,000 feet, a P-47 could dive like a comet, 550 miles per hour straight down. Nothing could follow it. And when it leveled out, it carried so much momentum that the only thing you could hear was that deep, thunderous roar that gave the plane its name. They called the new strategy boom and zoom. Dive. Shoot. Zoom away. It worked beautifully. By the summer of 1943, German pilots started whispering about the fat ones that dove faster than anything they'd ever seen. The joke had officially died. The day the legend was born was June 26, 1943. Second Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson, a 23-year-old farm kid from Oklahoma, was escorting bombers when 16 Fw-190s attacked his squadron. Within seconds, his plane was hit, again and again. Cannon shells tore through the fuselage, the cockpit filled with smoke, and hydraulic fluid poured into his lap. Shrapnel hit his leg. Blood covered his face. He tried to open his canopy to bail out, but it was jammed shut from the blast. He was trapped in a dying airplane, 20,000 feet over enemy territory. So he did the impossible. He kept flying. Moments later, a German fighter caught up to him, a veteran ace. The German lined up behind Johnson and opened fire. Machine guns. Cannons. Over and over. When he ran out of ammo, he pulled up beside the Thunderbolt to take a look. There was Johnson, half dead, his plane full of holes, but still in the air. The German just stared, shook his head, saluted, and flew away. When Johnson landed back in England, the mechanics counted over 200 bullet holes. The plane still worked. The canopy was welded shut from cannon fire. And Johnson, bleeding and exhausted, just said, "Well, she flies pretty good for a milk bottle." From that day on, the Thunderbolt had a new reputation. It wasn't ugly anymore. It was unstoppable. Once the pilots realized what it could do, the sky turned into a physics experiment. The P-47 wasn't a scalpel, it was a hammer. And the US used it like one. Instead of dueling German fighters, Thunderbolt started hunting everything else. Trains, trucks, tanks, even horses. If it moved, they shot it. A German infantryman described it like this: you would hear a faint growl far away. Then, suddenly, the ground would shake. And there they were, low, fast, and spitting fire. Each P-47 could unleash up to 3,400 rounds of .50 caliber ammo in a single sortie. If that wasn't enough, it could carry bombs or rockets too. In one pass, it could level a convoy or blow a tank column to ash. By late 1943, the Luftwaffe had gone from laughing to hiding. They called it Donnerschlag, thunderclap. And whenever they heard that deep, droning engine overhead, they ran for the trees. By 1944, the Thunderbolt had evolved into something even scarier. The new D-22 and D-25 models had paddle-blade propellers and extended range. They could escort bombers all the way to Berlin and still have fuel left to wreck a train on the way home. Each carried up to 2,500 pounds of bombs or 10 5-inch rockets. It wasn't just a fighter anymore, it was a flying artillery platform. When the Allies invaded Normandy, over 500 Thunderbolts patrolled the skies. They blew up bridges, strafed supply lines, and pounded German reinforcements before they even reached the beaches. A German panzer commander wrote later, "We feared no tank, no man, no shell as much as that sound. The deep hum that meant death from above." The P-47 had become the Thunder in Operation Overlord. By the end of D-Day, there wasn't much left for it to destroy. But behind all that thunder was something even more terrifying: America's industrial machine. Republic Aviation could build a brand new Thunderbolt every hour. Each one required 65,000 parts, 8 miles of wiring, and 1,200 gallons of sweat. At peak output, there were 15,683 Thunderbolts rolling out of factories, more than any other US fighter in the war. Many were built by women who'd never seen an airplane before. They worked around the clock, riveting armor plates and hammering wings into place. The result? Planes so tough even Nazi engineers refused to believe the damage reports. A captured German pilot once pointed to a row of destroyed Thunderbolts and mocked, "Your planes die like everything else." An American officer pointed at the next trainload of replacements and said, "Yeah, but ours come back tomorrow." That was the difference. The Luftwaffe ran out of planes, and pilots. America ran out of neither. By war's end, the flying milk bottle had racked up numbers that didn't even sound real. It destroyed more enemy aircraft than any other US fighter in Europe. It annihilated over 9,000 vehicles, bombed railways into dust, and turned German armor columns into molten scrap. Even the new jet fighters couldn't fully escape it. The Thunderbolt just dove faster. And when peace finally came, the pilots looked back at the machine they'd once mocked and realized what they'd been flying all along. Not a clumsy brute. Not a milk bottle. A monster, disguised as a joke. Robert Johnson summed it up perfectly: they laughed when it arrived. They stopped laughing when it didn't leave. The Germans thought it looked ridiculous. But it was the kind of ridiculous that wins wars. Big, ugly, overbuilt, and absolutely unstoppable. The P-47 Thunderbolt didn't just fly. It survived. And in the process, it made sure a whole lot of Germans didn't.